everybody. So with that pounding of the gavel, I want to welcome you to the September meeting of the Franklin Grand Isle Community Partnership. Nice to have everyone here post Labor Day. Hard to believe how fast the year is moving along, but as we always say, time does fly quickly. So, as we typically do, we will have introductions, and if you can state your name, position, organization, and something that you're grateful for, that would be great. And Melinda, are you going to start with the?
I am. Yep.
Just a second. Let's shift the screen to gallery view so we can see it. I think I can.
Do you know how to do that?
It's up in the
There we go. Okay, so the first person I will call on is Matthew.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. My name is Matthew LaFleur. I use pronouns he, him. I'm a Black African American with black hair and brown eyes and wearing a purple shirt. Yes, update on my organization. I'm going to update that to now. I'm part of the Department of Health of Vermont Equity Ambassador. Basically, I help with select boards across the state, basically, with their problems, suggestions, recommendations, and, just basically moving up on the world. And just to update you on what I'm thankful for the Declaration of Inclusion is finally in progress across the state of Vermont. Finally, we're getting that work done. That's so desperately needed for inclusivity, acceptance, and transparency for all. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Matthew. Michelle.
Hi, Michelle Bissett. I Youth and Family Outreach Coordinator at Franklin County Care and Communities and the Advocate Outreach Coordinator for Domestic Violence at the Abenaki Nation Assist Floyd. I'm just thankful for the nice weather.
Thank you. Megan.
Hello. Morning, everyone. Megan Bridges, United Way of Northwest Vermont, Community Impact Manager. Matthew, thank you for modeling the introduction. This is my first time that I'm going to attempt to do this so it's accessible for everyone. I am a white female with the accessibility in a Zoom meeting of describing myself. I've not done it yet, so you didn't hear me attack.
We did hear all that.
Yes.
So, okay. I appreciate learning from fellow community partners and community members on all such issues of accessibility, and I have a lot to learn. So I appreciate that. And did I say I appreciate air conditioning? Did you hear that?
No, but yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, I know I take it for granted. I take for granted air conditioning and heat, and I should not, because they are so valuable and so important, and I appreciate the AC in my life right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Nicole.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nicole Clemens. I am a white female with blonde hair currently up off my neck because of the heat. I am the resource coordinator for the United Way of Northwest Vermont. And I was going to say I'm grateful for air conditioning. I think we're all grateful for it these days. But I'm grateful for a lot of focus in the workplace that I'm currently with around self-care. I think that that's really helpful in the work that we do, and we're constantly reminded of it in our team. So I'm grateful for self-care lessons from those around me.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Rob is out on a fire drill, I believe, so we'll go to Barry.
Morning, everyone. Barry Lampe. I'm Project Manager for Housing for All, the Working Communities Challenge based at the Northwest Regional Planning Commission. Pronouns are he, him, white male, past 60, And I am grateful for the fact that summer runs through September 23rd apparently. So despite what the calendar is saying, everyone's going back to school, it is still summer and will be so until September 23rd. So let's not rush it.
Love it. Thank you, Barry. Lucy.
Hi, I'm Lucy, she, her. I am new AmeriCorps Vista member at United Way of Northwest Vermont. So I'm excited to be here. I am a white female with glasses, and I am grateful for September has been really beautiful and really great so far.
Wonderful.
Is she your
Thank
first
you,
timer?
Lucy. And
Is she
this
your
is your first time, correct?
Is it? Oh.
Welcome.
correct.
Get a party hat.
Be prepared, you get to sing your alma mater song at the conclusion of the meeting.
Yeah, we'll have you do a song and dance at the end. And Lucy, if you could, and anyone else who's joining us for the first time, if you could put your email address in the chat so I can add you to the listserv, that would be wonderful. And the next person is Kate.
Morning, everybody. I'm Kate. I am the area manager with AberHealth. I'm just happy today to have some flexibility in my schedule that I'm home with a sick kid and can be able to do that. So I'm grateful to be here and be able to do that too.
Great, thank you, Kate. Is this your first meeting with us?
No, I was here last month.
You were, okay, perfect. Just want to make sure I have you in our system. Okay, and Amanda.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda. I am a community health worker with the St. Albans Notch, and I am looking forward to the fall weather coming and coming out of the summer months. I'm a person during the summer months where I feel like I have to do so much and complete so many tasks and so many experiences. So it's nice to have some self-care and wind down a little bit.
Great, thank you. Super Mary.
You're on mute, Mary.
You're muted, Mary.
Okay, never mind, Mary.
Yeah, right? That's your moment of quiet. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary, and I am the substance use prevention consultant with the Division of Substance Use Programs, and I cover Franklin and Grand Isle. I am more of a sandy tan person, and today my hair is brownish, but the more sunshine I get, the more blonde it is. I'm wearing a green shirt, and my background is my old home, I guess. And today I am just grateful for the opportunity to be of service to the community, and I'm grateful for the opportunity that everyone is here with me. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Sonia.
Hi everyone, I'm Sonia. I'm another AmeriCorps Vista with United Way of Northwest Vermont. My title is a regional volunteer mobilizer. Just describing myself, I'm a white female and I'm blonde with blue eyes. And then something that I'm very grateful for is the rain the last couple of days. You have to know how I'm for that, but really nice to see the sun at home.
Wonderful. And Sonia, welcome for your first time.
Thank you.
We have a bell, a party hat, and we'll have you do a song and dance at the end of the meeting. And thank you for putting your email in the chat.
Oh, of course, got my dance prepared, so no worries.
You heard about us, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you. Rob, I'm going to go back to you now that I see you on screen.
Morning all. It seems like there were all that one. No, go for it. It's all you, man.
Hi, my name is Robert. I'm a 65-year-old black male. I don't think I need to really say that. You can see it. But I'm grateful for just life today and another opportunity to help someone. It's kind of what I live for. And I'm a housing advocate at Samaritan House. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Oh no, he's been here. Yeah, good morning, Robert. You know I would have had a different type of introduction for you to call you to the screen. So you saved yourself a little bit of embarrassment, unlike my poor Super Mary. Mr. Thayer, you're next, and it's so great to see your face again.
Morning, everybody. So I'm Rob Thayer. I'm the work-based learning coordinator at the Northwest Career Tech Center, mainly working with juniors and seniors who are getting into the community, connecting with career and interests. It's good to sort of see a lot of you. Sorry I'm not there in person. I'm gonna try to work to be more present in person as the year goes. I am grateful for quick emergency evacuation drills. That's right, like that was pretty quick and painless, so that was great. Definitely for the sun and for the start of the year. I know I'm kind of a weirdo in that I really like getting back and get back in the classroom and work with students. So stoked for that. And it sounded like just grateful, but people are describing yourself, so I would describe myself as kind of like a dusty dad. So I guess that's how I would describe myself. But stoked to be here with you guys and getting back at it.
Thanks, Rob. Good to see ya. Katie. And Katie, if you are talking, you're muted. Okay, maybe she got tied up. I'll come back to you. Oh, no, I won't. I see you coming now.
You got that? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Katie.
Hi, I'm Katie Doyle. You won't see me because I currently have my camera blocked because I'm paranoid about the people watching me when I'm not using my phone. So I'm sorry you won't see my face. But my name is Katie Doyle. I talk funny. I'm not trying to be calm and slow worthy. I am formerly of the Howard Center Public Deviation Program. And now I am residing at the Turning Point for Franklin County, and I am grateful for the thought that I oftentimes choose not to live in, but when I do remember to breathe, life goes so much easier. And the background is currently, I want to say, birchwood trees in a fall setting, green trees and the orange leaves on the top. It's just really gorgeous. So I'm sorry you won't be able to see it. Thank you.
Katie, I love you so much. And this is your first time at this meeting, right?
No, second time I was last month, but
that's true. Well,
difficulties. I can't always cooperate things and make things.
gotcha.
But I was here last month too.
Okay, I'm still giving you a party hat just because I love you. Thank you, Katie. And Courtney.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Courtney O'Brien. I'm the Quality Improvement Practice Facilitator for the St. Albans Health Service Area and part of the Blueprint for Health team employed by Northwestern Medical Center. I too do not have a camera on. My apologies, I'm not feeling well today and also home with a sick kiddo. And so to explain how I'm looking, I have a terrible messy bun on the top of my head with blonde hair. And I am grateful for the flexibility. I've used this one before because it seems to be that my kiddo is always sick during this particular meeting. But I'm grateful for the flexibility to be home and still be able to connect with the community. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you, Courtney. And Senator Irene Renner.
Morning, everyone. Irene Renner. I serve a number of towns in Chittenden County as well as Fairfax, which is why I go to this meeting. Sitting in my kitchen here in Essex. Still cool at the moment because we have the windows open all night, but it's gonna be warming up fast. I'm a white female with some Asian heritage. I have long, wavy shoulder length hair normally, but it's pulled up today. I've been knocking on doors for the past month, and it's just been really great that people have opened up their doors and chatted with me about their concerns. And I'm just grateful for the honesty. You know, people often start off by saying, "What party are you in?" But nevertheless, they do engage with me, whatever the, you know, their persuasion, and I'm grateful for that. And I will be dropping off at 10, unfortunately, for another meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. Crystal.
Good morning, Crystal Lampman, Executive Director, Franklin County Caring Communities. I apologize, I intended to be in person today, and while I was in the shower, my 6-year-old came running in very excited that we had a prison break and the entire herd of cows was in our backyard. So I missed the prompt for this morning, other than being grateful, and I guess I'm just grateful for being able to laugh at life's absurdities occasionally.
Thank you, Crystal. And I saw somebody on that was named Michael, but I don't see Michael anymore, so I guess we'll move on into the room. And I'm gonna get creative, and I'm gonna start with Alan with Northwest Access TV, one of our favorite people that is joining us and filming us, and if it wasn't for his expertise, then you probably wouldn't hear or see us. So Alan.
Hi folks, I'm Alan Cunningham, white male with brown hair and glasses, and I am very, very grateful that the football season is just about 24 hours away from starting, and it's going to be nothing but football on Sundays for me from here until February.
See you next year. Thanks, Alan. Okay, and then I'll go over to Faith.
Good morning, I am Faith Dubois. I'm a community health worker with the Abenaki Nation of the Missisquoi. I work on 3 grants there, COVID, hypertension, and a Heritage Corn Grant, which is, yes, as fun as it sounds. And I'm currently grateful for the last gasps of summer, or that's what I'm telling myself to get us through this next little sweat fest.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Megan Malbuff. I work at NCSS. I'm the program manager of adult outpatient and integrated health. And I'm she, her, white female with medium length blonde hair. I'm grateful because I run outside most mornings, and it was absolutely gorgeous out this morning.
First thing.
And there's been a lot of rain in my life these days. And I'm a little tired of being tough, so very grateful for this beautiful morning so far.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm Reverend Jessica Moore. I use she, her pronouns. I am describing myself because in my mind I'm 19 years old, 100 pounds, and blonde. But I'm not. But I am a white female with brown hair, recently cut bangs to cover my 5 head. I am super grateful for intergenerational friendships. I love that I know people who are 5, and I love that I know people who are 85.
I'm Larry Christ. I'm the director of the Vermont Parent Representation Center. I'm an old white guy who the last time I was asked what color my hair and beard were, it was a TSA worker, and when I answered brown, he looked at me and said, "Sir, you haven't been brown for a long time." And that's when it dawned on me that I've become an old white guy. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have my oldest child, who lives and works all over the world, come and spend 6 weeks here in Vermont this summer. And I've discovered that she's no longer a child. She's an accomplished adult who knows much more than I do.
I'm Jackie DiBartolomeo. I'm with the St. Albans Messenger. Something I'm grateful for, I think, we are in the thick of the hot weather, but I see a few of the leaves changing, so I'm grateful for the impending autumn that is hopefully coming soon. Yeah.
Hi, John Horton. I'm old. In fact, maybe Larry would beat me, but I suspect I'm the oldest person in the meeting. 73, white male, with very, very unforgettable hair, gray hair. Most of you have had a chance to witness my various hairdos in person. I'm Sheldon Methodist Church Food Shelf. Today I'm here in part because, not to steal thunder from other unnamed individuals, but in terms of how many titles they have, but I also am on the board of directors of the Vermont Parent Representation Center. I'm actually the secretary, if you can believe that. So here to support Larry. And I'm thankful today because today I think will be the end of birthday. My 7-year-old granddaughter's birthday was yesterday, but Sunday we had birthday party with a couple of the cousins with cake and presents. Monday night we had birthday party with her father's girlfriend and presents and cake. And last night we had birthday party with a couple of other cousins and birthday cake and presents. And today's early dismissal, so at the end of the day today we're having birthday party with several of her school friends. And I think this will be the end of it. I hope so, but anyway. We're thankful for birthday parties.
That's a lot of cake.
Yeah, really. That's a lot of cake. My blood sugar, I don't dare test it.
I was gonna say, I think maybe you planned that, I don't know. Yeah, really. Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations here at Northwestern Counseling and Sports Services. Go by he, him, white, male, balding, as you can see. Very much like Larry. I used to have brown hair, and I do have brown eyes. I'm thankful for so many things. Let me quickly, though, say, since last we met, we now have our beloved collie puppy that has graced our house and is absolutely fantastic. Her name is Higby. The other things that I'm grateful for, there are so many. I'm going to also mention, as Jackie did, the impending colors, the fall foliage, which is just spectacular in this state as well. So I was going to do a football thing, a funny thing. Maybe I'll do it later because it's really meant to be in pure fun, about a young lady who got a letter from her husband and it was videoed and it was quite funny. But anyway, I will turn it over to Melinda.
Thanks, Joe. My name is Melinda White, so that covers a couple of parts of my introduction. I am grateful for the warm weather. I absolutely adore the heat. I love it. I feel like, I went running yesterday after work and it was already almost, I think, over 90 with the feels like. And by the time I was done running, I feel like I finally thoroughly thawed out from last winter. So I'm prepared for the next one because it takes a long time for me to thaw out. So I love the heat. I love the sun. I hope it doesn't go anywhere. I know it will, but I hope it doesn't. And when it does, I'll be wishing you well so I can go to Florida probably 4 or 5 times over the winter. And I'm grateful for Joe because he just helps my life be not boring. That's a wrap.
Okay, I guess that's everyone. Okay. And you know what's always so fascinating about this is, among many things, but weather is one of the areas where, you really learn how it has different impacts on people. And that it doesn't matter what the weather is, there are going to be people who love it, and there are going to be those who are kind of disenchanted with it, no matter what time of year. So it's always a fascinating topic, for sure. So with that, let us go to the minute approval from our August 2nd meeting, which I know I sent as part of the packet last week, and those that are here have it in their packets in front of them. And if I could get a motion to approve the minutes and second, we would appreciate that.
I'll move.
Okay, John has motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Crystal.
Crystal, okay, second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, and the ayes have it. Now, before we move on to Larry and John and our monthly presentation, there was one thing that I failed to put in the agenda that I usually do this time of year, but it's in your packets. And that is, we are now at the point in the year where we take nominations for what is now the Engroff Ostermeyer Legacy Award. And that nomination period is open now through the end of October. And in your package, you have a nomination form, and then also you can see the list of past recipients of the award since the award began in 2008. So anyway, you have between now and October 31st, and if you'd like to nominate someone, all you need to do is forward that information to me, and we will take it from there. So again, the Engroff Ostermeyer
Who got
Legacy
it last
Award.
year, Joe? Yay!
Yeah.
It was last year.
Well
earned, well earned.
Thanks, Belinda. Okay, so, you know, a lot of the presentations that come here, many of them are, you know, very
Recording in progress.
That's okay. Many of them are perhaps very uplifting. There's a lot of very positive elements to it. You know, this month's presentation is critically important because I think that people need to gain a much greater understanding here in the state of Vermont of exactly what takes place in a lot of cases relative to children. And today, Larry Christ, who you met, the executive director, and John Gordon, who was on their board and secretary, are going to take us through a presentation called Broken Systems, Broken Promises, the Vermont Representation Center. And I think you'll find it extremely interesting. So with that, I will turn the floor and screen over to Larry and John. Larry.
Thank you. Before I begin, I would also like to recognize Jessica Moore, who is a fellow board member at VPRC as well.
Thank you. I was going to interrupt John and say, but I'm a board member too.
You had your chance, you passed it up. You passed it up.
I had another joke.
So to begin this presentation, I want to be very clear that this presentation is not about bashing any particular agency. It's not about bashing individuals who work in these agencies. It's about talking about a system that was designed to help children and families. And our findings, which are not opinions, they're findings, show that it doesn't work. And it hasn't worked for a long time. I've been asked, why are you so negative about this presentation, Larry? And my response is, if you take your automobile to a mechanic and the mechanic tells you that the engine needs to be repaired, the transmission is bad, the brakes don't work, before you take your family on vacation, you don't want to say, why are you bashing my car? You basically say, okay, how much is it going to cost to fix it? Because we want to do our vacation and we want everybody to be safe. That really is what this presentation is about. It's about a 3-year project that had never been done in Vermont before and has never been done anywhere in the country that we're able to find out about. And the title is called Broken System, Broken Promises. And the system that I'm presenting about is our system in the state, our child protection system of substantiating child abuse and neglect and the placement of individuals on the registry, the Child Protection Registry. That's what this is about. This is about outcomes. It's not really about opinion. There's nothing in this presentation that is my opinion or anyone else's. It's what we found. So basically, the substantiation and registry system is our system of determining who has abused children and who has not, and who should be placed on the Child Protection Registry, which you will see later in the presentation has serious implications. I want to start with a story though. A single mother with 3 children, 2 teenagers and a 3-year-old. Registered nurse, full-time employee in a psychiatric facility. The older teenager alleges that she's been verbally and emotionally abused by her mother. The Department for Children and Families opens an investigation. They determine that she has emotionally and verbally abused the child. She contacts VPRC. We take her case. We spend roughly 2.5 years working on her appeal. And what we found was there was no verbal abuse. There was no emotional abuse. What we had was a teenage girl who decided that she wanted to continue sleeping with an adult male, and the only way she could do that was to allege abuse and be placed at a relative's house. 2.5 years. In the interim, a younger teenager in the family goes to school with a mark on her arm. Same mother. A physician, well, a school nurse looks at it and says, I'm not sure what this is about, but can you tell me how you got this mark? And the teenager says, my mother burned me with a cigarette. The child is taken to a pediatrician who looks at the injury and says, I think this is a cigarette burn. That would be child abuse. Mother is substantiated for physical abuse. This case and the other case are running simultaneously, 2 substantiations. 2.5 years later, they both get resolved at the same time. It turns out that it was not a cigarette burn. It was self-inflicted. The child acknowledged that she did it herself because she was upset because her mother wouldn't buy her a new iPhone. That process would seem bad enough, except that in the 2.5 year period, mother lost her job because of the substantiation. Sole source of income for the family. She lost her nurse's license. She lost her housing. She lost her children. During the 2.5 year period, mother became pregnant with twins. She had no place to live. She wound up being placed in a hotel paid for by the Department for Children and Families, where she gave birth to her twins. Both of these cases took 2.5 years of appeals to resolve. And in both cases, there was no evidence that showed that she did either one of these things. We now have 5 children who were potential Vermonters growing up who don't live in Vermont any longer. Because as soon as these cases were resolved, mother moved out of state and took the children with her. I wish I could say that this story is unusual. It isn't. And what you'll see in the presentations is our experience was that we saw this over and over and over again. VPRC is a very small nonprofit. I'm not going to go through much with this. We were founded in 2007. We've worked with over 2,500 families. We provide legal education, advocacy, and we assist parents in dealing with the state child protection system. We are also engaged very much in assisting children because there are children who are substantiated as well as parents. The reality is that VPRC, you can leave this one up, but the reality is that VPRC, we have piloted at least 4 different projects, 2 of which involve Franklin County. These showed cutting-edge ways of reforming the child protection system. And I would say that none of these pilots have ever produced any changes in the state system. They have produced changes in other state systems, but not in Vermont. The Substantiation Appeal Project was designed for one purpose. It was simply to test the accuracy of the substantiation system. VPRC accepted the first 33 appeals with no appeals turned down. There was no cherry picking. There was no saying, no, we don't want to do this appeal because it looks like it's not going to be successful or because it's dealing with a particular issue we don't want to deal with. We originally started out taking 15. That was going to be the marker. We used attorneys, non-attorney advocates, and other professionals to present comprehensive representation at no charge. And you'll see why the at no charge is so important. as we go through this. In all 33 substantiations, all 33 were dismissed or overturned. That's 100% of all of the appeals that came to us turned out not to have a basis for the substantiation. I want to add, if we had your local hospital or medical center that had a review who came in and looked at cancer diagnosis and found that every cancer diagnosis was wrong, there would be an uproar. The hospital would be shut down, the lab would be shut down until a team came in and decided what's wrong with this system and let's fix it. There is no uproar about the substantiation system because there is no one who's really responsible for it and no one who's actually in charge of it. And I'll explain why. The ability to accurately determine abuse and neglect is the most important component of the child protection system. Now, people have lots of other priorities in the system, but this is what it was created for initially, and this is still its mainstay. The determination of our children being abused or neglected. It is the most awesome power that exists in state government. The Department for Children and Families can't remove a child, only a court can. The Department for Corrections can't execute people. No one can in Vermont. It can incarcerate people, but only after a court says that they need to be incorporated. This power is unmatched in state government. What we found in our study is that what mistakes result in are that abusers go undetected. Innocent parents are labeled as abusers, children are removed and families are separated absent evidence of wrongdoing, and employment is curtailed significantly once you are placed on the Child Protection Registry. There are about 3,000 investigations, abuse and neglect investigations, on average in Vermont each year. 700 to 900 people are substantiated, roughly of that 3,000. There are currently roughly 25,000 people on the Child Protection Registry. Now let that number sink in. We have a registry with 25,000 plus or minus people on it in a state of 640,000. These numbers are approximations, but they are consistent year in and year out, and have been for decades. Next slide. This is how someone is substantiated. DCF receives a report and determines whether the report should be investigated or assessed. If it's investigated, an investigator is assigned. The investigator and the supervisor then determine guilt, and it's done separately and distinctly in each district office. There's little standardization from district to district. You are now substantiated. Notice what's missing. There's no court, there's no judge, there's no one. There's a worker and the worker supervisor. That's who initiates a substantiation. Once this happens, you are now a defendant in a protracted appeal process. And let me point out, any of us who have any connection with children can be substantiated. All it takes is one report. It doesn't have to be true. It just takes a single report and you can be substantiated. You have appeal rights. The appeal rights are you have an administrative review within DCF. The challenge is that from the date you receive your substantiation letter, if you receive it, you have 14 days in which to notify DCF that you want to appeal. Your notification is sent by first-class mail to the last known address. But no one during the substantiation process tells you that's how you're going to be notified. People move all the time. They move on a regular basis in some cases. The other thing is, when mail is sent first class, there's no record that the mail is actually sent. There's no record that it's actually received. The number of people who have come to us saying, I never got a letter. DCF acknowledges that it does not have a verification system to prove that it mailed a letter to someone. It has a practice, it has a policy, but there is no proof that the practice and policy are actually followed. If you are unsuccessful in your appeal to the administrative appeal, previous slide, but I'll stay with it, you can appeal to the Human Services Board. That is a quasi-judicial appeal. It operates on the Vermont Rules of Evidence. How many people in the room know what the Vermont Rules of Evidence are? I've been doing this for 3 years. I still don't know what they are. You're not assigned an attorney. You have to, if you want to have an attorney, you have to hire your own attorney. The standard of proof at the Human Services Board is a preponderance of the evidence, which means at least 51% of the evidence needs to show that you are guilty of what's alleged. However, in your DCF review, the standard is a much lower standard. It's called a reasonable person standard. It's not based on evidence. It's based on information. Now, we are all, everyone on this process, in this room and on Zoom, are reasonable people. But if we all get together and look at a particular issue, are we all going to agree? I don't think so. And that's a huge piece of the problem. Vermont is now an outlier in this process. Reasonable person used to be the standard nationally. Now we are either one of 4 or one of 7, depending on how you count them, states that continue to use preponderance of evidence at the first level of substantiation. I'm sorry, reasonable person. So you can be substantiated with no evidence. But when you appeal to the Human Services Board, the state has to produce the evidence. That takes months and months and months because it's a quasi-judicial process. Having 2 separate standards drives people crazy because a DCF investigator doesn't need any evidence. They just need to believe that this happened. However, when it goes to the Human Services Board, they have to produce the evidence. Imagine if you worked in that kind of an environment. It's really crazy making. It truly is. So next slide. If you are substantiated and you lose your appeal or you don't appeal, you're placed on the Child Protection Registry. It prohibits employment approximately 33% of all of the jobs in Vermont, especially jobs historically held by women. Teaching jobs, nursing jobs, medical technician jobs, childcare jobs. All of those you're prevented from working in. And if you are licensed, you lose your license. You can't volunteer to school. You can't do anything that relates to children. That's what happens when you go on the registry. Now, folks say, well, you can wait and be expunged. However, you have to wait years for expungement. And there is no guarantee that you will be expunged. Many people believe, well, I'm told I have to wait 3 years for expungement, so in 3 years I'm just going to submit my application. No, you have to prove 3 years later that you have done a variety of things to ensure that you will never again do what you were substantiated for. That is a very tall order, especially when you believe you didn't do it in the first place. To be able to be expunged, you need to admit you did what you were substantiated for. Only 33% of that 700 to 900 people who are substantiated each year ask for a DCF review. So only 1/3. And one of the questions is, why do only 1/3 of the people who are substantiated appeal? Why doesn't a larger percentage appeal? An assistant attorney general told me once, it's easy, Larry, it's because guilty people don't appeal. They know they're guilty, so they don't appeal. And then my response was, well, how come the court system is filled with people who say, I didn't do it, I want an appeal? Yet in the appeals, it's proven that they did it. We don't really know why it's only 1/3, but what we have found is a significant number of people say, I was never notified. And we ask them, did you move during the process? Often it's yes. Did anyone ask you for your address? No. The answer from DCF is, well, a letter wasn't sent back to us as undeliverable, so we assume that they got it, and they just didn't respond. But that's a major assumption, because first of all, you're assuming that the letter was actually sent when you can't prove that it was sent. And the second piece is, you don't know where they lived when you sent the letter, because you didn't ask them to keep your address up your address up to date. Now, of that 33%, only 1 to 5% ask for a Human Service Board appeal. And again, there's a time frame. Part of the time frame is that you have to respond within 30 days of getting your notice that you've lost your DCF appeal. But the bigger barrier is that it's a quasi-judicial process. And if you don't hire a lawyer or have access to a really good advocate, your chances of being successful at an HSB appeal are minimal, because the state DCF is represented by the Attorney General's office. You are contending with an attorney who does this day in and day out. This is their job. Appeals, in our experience, the shortest appeal period was 4 months for an appeal. However, the longest has taken more than 2.5 years. And right now we have at least 5 appeals that are pending that are approaching the 2-year mark. And it's because that's how long it takes to go through the Human Service Board approach. Or in some cases, it's how long it's taken to go through the DCF approach. We have one case right now where there was a DCF review that was sent back upon appeal. That review took 7 months. Re-review took 7 months to reinvestigate it. They supported the substantiation, had another review. That one got sent back as well because of irregularities and how it was held. So we are now in a position where the DCF is saying, we'll offer you a third review. A third review to do what? We've already shown that 2 reviews were done incorrectly. Why can't we appeal to the Human Services Board? And it's part of the process. This is just the way this works. So we haven't even gotten to an appeal at the Human Services Board yet. And again, the substantiation and appeal notices are sent to the last known address. That's it. There is no way to verify that a letter is sent. The most important piece of this is that failure to ask for a DCF review within the 14-day time frame disqualifies you from all appeals. You don't get to appeal to the Human Services Board if you're late. And what I mean by late is you can be 1 day late meeting that 14-day requirement. And keep in mind, in today's world, if a letter is mailed on a Friday, depending on where you are in the state, you may not get it for 4 days. Then you have to all of a sudden decide, I'm going to appeal, and let me get the appeal in the mail right away. And it could take 3 or 4 days to get back to DCF. So you basically have 24 to 48 hours to make a huge decision in your life in the midst of all the other crises you're dealing with. Attorneys are not provided through this process. If you hire a private attorney for the DCF review, it's going to cost you $10,000. There are some attorneys who will write your appeal for you for $5,000, but they won't represent you in the hearing until you pay another $5,000. A private attorney for an appeal to the Human Services Board is going to cost between $20,000 and $50,000. That's the going rate. And there are few attorneys in the state that are adept at this simply because there are very few people who can pay this much money. That's the reason that it was critical that VPRC provided these services at no cost to individuals, because none of the people that we work with could afford this. This is the only known study anywhere in the US. The cases were simply taken as they came. Cases sent back for reinvestigation were done by the same office and personnel that produced the first flawed investigation. I mean, if you can kind of imagine that, it's like having something happen in the hospital, and if you appeal what happened in the hospital. It's sent back to the same hospital personnel whom you're saying made a mistake. We have cases that simply the reinvestigation takes 6 to 7 months, even after we provide all of the witnesses and make all of the appointments for them to be interviewed. 6 to 7 additional months on top of potentially the 6 months to a year that preceded this. Lastly, the Human Services Board has no authority except to overturn, uphold, or send back a substantiation. It cannot compel DCF to actually complete a reinvestigation. The Human Services Board, we think, okay, we'll go to them and they'll make this right. They don't have any authority to do that. Their only authority is to say we overturn the substantiation, which they don't really like to do, or we'll send it back for a reinvestigation. But they have no authority to actually compel DCF to do this. And one of our cases was resolved because after 2 years of DCF failing to provide any additional information as requested, the Attorney General's office finally said, we can't go forward with this case any longer. Our client won't give us the information to give to the board. And so there was a stipulated agreement that the case would be withdrawn. The other thing that I would add is that at the Human Services Board, it is a confidential proceeding. Most cases that are resolved at the Human Services Board, in our experience, were resolved through what was called settlements. After X number of months of quasi-judicial going back and forth, the state acknowledges that it doesn't have the evidence to go forward and withdraws the substantiation. That's never recorded anyplace because it's considered a settlement. So DCF can make the same mistake over and over and over again in substantiations, and there is never a record of it. And that basically is one of the things that our project discovered, because no one has ever handled this many cases before to be able to see the patterns and how they unfold. Okay. This is what the substantiation project found. This is not my opinion. This is what the data shows us. Investigations are substandard at best. Now, that doesn't just mean that innocent parents are found guilty of abuse or neglect. It also means that people who have abused and neglected children aren't found guilty because the same lack of investigative skills go both ways. If you don't know how to do a competent investigation, you're going to identify the wrong people, and you're not going to be able to support a substantiation for the right people who should be substantiated. Witnesses are not interviewed. Interviews are incorrectly recorded. Outcomes are predetermined. It's determined by a worker in advance of talking to anybody whether the parent was guilty or not. And the basic laws aren't followed. And that's a real problem for workers because they don't know the law. They don't have legal counsel who advise them, interestingly enough. And they don't have supervisors who understand the law either. So these are the people who are making the decisions, but they don't have the tools within which to do it. Is it their fault? No. It's a systemic problem. The system doesn't provide the tools for them to be able to do their job. In addition, and this is a huge piece, our laws are antiquated. The laws we have in place today, for the most part, for substantiations are over 40 years old. Imagine you go back to that same hospital and you walk in for some kind of treatment and all the equipment is over 40 years old that's sitting in there. That's what they can provide. You get out of that medical facility really quickly and you go somewhere else. You can't go somewhere else here. The investigators are tied to antiquated laws. The legislature has added things over time, but they haven't dealt with the core problems here, which is that we have a system in place that was built for a different time, a different era, and for different purposes. We have just continued to advance it decade after decade without significant changes. DCF decisions initially, where you're substantiated, are based on information and feelings, not on evidence. The average person cannot defend themselves. And we tried this with several of our cases where we said, we will provide the information for you as a parent, but you're going to need to present the information yourself. It didn't matter how competent the parents were, they were not able to do this. And we wound up having to pick it up and do it for them. Time frames are nearly impossible to comply with. The 14 days is, as I identified it before, it is extraordinarily difficult when you're in the midst of this kind of trauma as a parent to remember that you have 14 days, to be able to count the 14 days accurately and get an appeal in. The two standards of proof are not justifiable or sensible any longer. It makes no sense for a worker to be able to substantiate you based on feelings and information, but then have to prove it with evidence which they never gathered in the first place because they didn't need it in the first place. It's unfair to the worker, it's unfair to the parents. There's no verification that a person is actually notified of their substantiation. We have some people who have come to us who've said, I've been a nurse for X number of years, I just applied for a new job, and I'm told that I was substantiated 5 years ago. I never had a hearing, I never had a review, I never got a letter. What we found in the process is that when a person had competent counsel, they always prevailed. DCF is trying to reform this system, but cannot do it alone and can't do it in a timely manner. This system doesn't stop. It continues every day to have people go through it using the same standards that we have found over and over again are inadequate. There is a process now underway in DCF to try to figure out what the reform should be, but that process is going to take months at best, and then will require the legislature to weigh in. We tried this last year. It did not come up in the legislature, so now we're trying it again this year. That means another 700 to 900 people have gone through this system. How many years will we keep doing this at this point? Next frame.
It is locked up.
Okay. So basically, and I think this is the last slide, or second to last slide. How do we reform the system? It's not rocket science. It really isn't. We have identified over and over and over again the things that need to be changed. We need to update Title 33 and Title 49. All of the changes that we've proposed are based on this experience, and they can be found at www.vtprc.org, where you will find our report, Broken System, Broken Promises. H-169, which was entered into the last session and will come up again this session, is going to be heard. That's what we've been told. It's a starting point for reform in 2024, but it's only going to happen if citizens indicate that this is important to them, because that's the way the democratic process works. If legislators don't know that this is important, they're going to go to things where people tell them it is important. DCF management must develop competent investigative capability and centralize DCF substantiation decisions now and not wait until all of these changes are in place. To do that does not require legislative change. DCF management could, in fact, retrain their workers and centralize the decision making, because what you will find is you can be substantiated in one district, but you wouldn't be substantiated for that in another district. So the question is, do you pick which district you live in based on what their substantiation process is? No, this is Vermont. People are supposed to be treated equally from one part of the state to the other. That does not happen here in this system. It is a decentralized system that gives the greatest responsibility to the people least trained to do the work, and that is at the local office level. We like to think if it's local, it's got to be better. Not in this case, because there is simply no consistencies to the decisions. Vermont needs to adopt a preponderance of evidence at both levels, because having two separate levels, as I've explained, doesn't make any sense. Now I'm going to add one number here that's not here. The state of Massachusetts uses one appeal system. The department there does not conduct its own reviews. It goes to a centralized review system. They use preponderance of the evidence. As was recently reported in the Boston Globe, 50% of all substantiations are overturned in Massachusetts upon appeal. Think about that again in the context of a hospital. 50% of cancer diagnoses are found to be wrong. Now, our project showed it was 100% of the cases. We don't pretend that that's a sampling that anyone can rely on. It's 33 cases out of a couple thousand, but they weren't selected. They were taken as they came. If we just use the Massachusetts numbers, it's still 50% are wrong. We can't have a system that has these ramifications, both identifying the wrong people and missing the right people 50% of the time. And the last slide, I think. Okay. We've proven that the current system fails both our children and their families. Reform of the system costs very little, and we outline this, but it saves a great deal. Can you imagine how much taxpayer dollars and how much time, in addition to the amount of trauma that's caused with the current system? It's an unbelievable waste, and it's a terrible use of state employees' time, and it's terrible outcomes for families. If we don't reform the system now, there's going to be costly litigation going forward. There will be. A system can't keep failing like this and not find itself in court. And there are pending court cases now. I suggest you read the full report and then decide for yourself. Is this something you believe is important and you should act on? And in doing so, you should contact your elected representatives. Again, you can find the full report at www.vtprc.org. It's called Broken System, Broken Promises. And the last slide, I believe. Okay, the closing story. A mother and father have their parental rights terminated. 3 young children. Grandfather agrees that he's going to adopt 3 children. He takes the 3 children, incorporates them in his home, is weeks away from finalizing an adoption. The kids are playing in the yard with a group of other young children, and one of the kids takes a wiffle ball bat and whacks one of the other children. Grandfather tells the child, "You can't do that, you have to stop." Child whacks another child. This happens several times. Finally, the grandfather goes over, takes the wiffle ball bat away, walks up to the child and says, "I told you, you can't do this. It hurts other people. And you don't seem to understand that." And he whacks the kid on the butt one time with a wiffle ball bat. He's substantiated. Last week, after 2.5 years, the Human Service Board ruled that there was no abuse and neglect in that situation. What I've left out is, right after the wiffle ball bat incident, the department removed all 3 children, placed them with 2 children, placed them with another family who adopted them. 2.5 years later, it's found he did not abuse or neglect his grandchildren. He was within weeks of adoption. He now has no contact with the grandchildren, can't have any contact with the grandchildren. They don't know really that their grandfather went through this process. This was a decision that the Human Services Board, after 2.5 years, ruled on last week. This system has to change. It really does. That's it. I'm sorry not to bring a cheery picture to people, but the reality is, this is the system we have. It can be fixed. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. Okay.
Thank you, Larry. Any questions for Larry from anyone? Matthew?
Yes, I do have. Thank you very much. I do have 2 questions, and one of them is very, very important. The statistics, what is the current data on this, because I want to keep track of the current data. because we all know that equity is now involved in the state of Vermont. What does that add up to, the current outlook, moving forward? That's question number one. And question number two is this data accurate? Because you're sitting there saying that it's been, the system of Vermont is, we all know, is 100-year-old system, and this hasn't been updated since basically since the end of time or since the beginning of time. How will our legislators, and what will it take for us to actually, make this a priority? Because, it's like, families and children are falling through the cracks of the court system. And some of those families and children are of color. And we know that that's very, very important for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, Matthew. And you actually reminded of something that I forgot to say and didn't put on the slide. The allegations, the investigation that occurs for substantiation is often the same allegations that are put in an affidavit by DCF, which has families entering family court. It's the same allegations. They're not dealt with as the same issues. You have the family court process going on, and for the same actions, you have the substantiation process going on in DCF. You can have, so when we look at that, we could extrapolate and say, well, is it every case that goes to family court now? Shouldn't be there because the allegations are being disproven somewhere else. We don't know what that data is, and we don't know the data because it's impossible to get it, because family court is highly confidential. The substantiation process is highly confidential. We only know what we know because of the cases we've taken. So it's a picture. It was actually a moving picture for 3 years now, because that's how long it's taken to go through 33 cases, that long. But I can't come to any other conclusion other than the fact that the data shows that we have families going into family court because of allegations that are not true to begin with. And it takes, again, it can take years in family court for those to be resolved. Relative to how long the current system has been in place, the basic laws that are in place today were the laws that I had to work with when I moved to Vermont 35 years ago to work for SRS, which was the predecessor of DCF. Basically the same laws. When I came to Vermont, the registry was not used for employment purposes. It couldn't be. The law prohibited it. The only reason the registry could be used was, one, to tell the federal government what the suspected rate of abuse or neglect was, and to determine who could have a state license for child care or foster care. That was it. No one else could see the registry. In its wisdom, the legislature decided that any organization or business that worked with children ought to have the same right. The reason the system is a failure today is because we've simply taken a system that wasn't intended for public use, and now we use it for public employment uses. And at the time that change occurred, the then SRS commissioner told the legislature, this is not a good idea unless we update the laws, because no one has a right to a state license, but everyone has a right to employment. So we can't take a system that's really designed on hearsay and having to do with whether we issue a state license, and now say, this proves you shouldn't work in a third of all the jobs in Vermont. However, no one, not the governor, not the legislature, and not the courts, has stood back and taken a look at this and said, you know what, we made a mistake about 30 years ago, or less than that. Well, close to 30 years ago. We should have updated the appeal system. We didn't. We should have updated the substantiation system. We didn't. It is the same system. It has only gotten worse because we've added more reasons. Virtually everything someone does with a child, no, let me back up. Virtually every injury a child receives now can be considered abuse in some fashion. Because if you can't prove how your child got a bruise, the assumption is that you abused them. if you're the caregiver. That's really how the policies are written at this point. So I hope that answers the question. Oh, and your last piece was, I think you have to contact people in the legislature and let them know that this is a real issue, and you can use House Bill 169 as the reference, which we're in the process. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna. I was also asking, where does the equity, fit into all of this? Of, also that data with people of color. I was just trying to make that clarification about where does this data count actually involve in this part too as well, because we know people of color has also fallen through the system with families and children, and we know that the statistics that I researched was 50 to 60% of that, because it has been stigmatized and it's a traditional system that sees disadvantaged communities or people of color as the perpetrator, or the people that are considered child abusers off the bat, because it's in our heritage of people of color to be child abusers. Where does that where is that fact and where is that data too as well? Because that's what we see when I mean equity. Where does that data show? Thank you very much. Sorry for clarification.
Okay. The project has been going on for about 3 years. Had you asked me that question in the first year, I would say that of 15 cases, there was one family of color. However, we now are at 33 cases, and the percentage and the number of families of color that have been substantiated has increased. I can't tell you by how much, but it has increased. One of the things we have found, however, is that where families of color are involved, the initial assessment for substantiation is that there's substance abuse involved. We don't find that with white families. That's not the go-to. It appears that for whatever reason, the investigators decide, particularly if it's a black mother, that there must be substance abuse involved. And in each of the cases we've had, we found that that was not the case. But it was the assumption that was made. Now, I will say the commonality for all of the families we've worked with, for the most part, is poverty. They're poor. You don't find wealthy people who get substantiated. And the reason is because they hire good advocates, first of all. But we only see the picture that we see. But we haven't seen a wealthy person yet. So.
Thank you for clarification.
Sure.
See Mary.
Thank you. It's good to see you. One of the things that I know from my work is that many children under the age of 18 are also put on the substantiation list, clearly just by the reports that are made by schools. And it adds another layer as these children grow up and are on the substantiation list and don't get their mail because they're minors, or people aren't able to show up at that hearing. And then the response is like, well, you're on forever. And it turns out that you can, well, maybe not forever, for 3 or 7 years. And it's not that big a deal, because by the time that, 3 or 7 years pass, you'll still be able to get a job, is what they're told. And the problem with that is that even if they've been on for 3 or 7 years, their name actually doesn't come off. And you have to petition that. And I know in my inquiries that I've been told that you have one shot at it. And if you ask for that petition to happen and you don't complete it, or you choose to not do it when you, complete the process when you ask, you do not have another chance. And the other thing that I know has happened with a few folks in our community is that they have been the person who has done the reporting and then gone and tried to get a job in a school or do some volunteering. And as the person doing the reporting, mistakes were made so that they were on the substantiation list not because they were accused, but because they were the person who did the reporting. But affidavits and have been, I don't know, I always look at sloppy. I think if you're going to do this inquiry, doing it well and doing it with a letter of accuracy and understanding that it destroys many people's lives is not even recognized. It's seen as a job, and it really is all about gossip and hearsay, and it's a disgusting way in which that we maybe despicable way in which that we think that we can manage people. And I do believe that when we are too busy pointing the fingers and destroying people's lives, we actually do miss what truly is the problem. And that's demonstrated daily. So thank you so much for doing your work. And I look forward to that continued work in changing the lives. And I think for me in our community, you know, is giving hope to a whole generation of young men whose lives have been taken away from this process and this process alone. And just as a side note, DCF is not required to keep all the paperwork on each case. They get to pick and choose. So it's interesting how affidavits are kept, but interviews of the accused are not kept in the file.
Thank you, Mary, for those points. One clarification on expungement. You're correct in that individuals have to wait a predetermined amount of time based on a formula that the legislature has approved. Then the individual can seek expungement. If they are unsuccessful in their first attempt for expungement, they're given an additional period of time to wait before you can go back again. And in many cases, it's a year. Sometimes it's more than that, depending on what it was they were substantiated for. The difficulty is, especially in the cases that you've referenced, young people. I've just recently worked with someone who did not get his appeal in on time. Therefore, he lost his appeal rights. He then said, well, I'll wait the 3 years and I'll get expungement. And I said, no, that's not what you have to do. You have to start doing things now to build your record to show what you've done in preparation for expungement. Because if you don't do X, Y, and Z, when you go for expungement, they're going to say, prove to us that you're not going to do again what you did before. And it took a while for that to settle in. He said, but 3 years is a long way off. I said, no, it's not. 3 years happens faster than you know. There is no one who explains during this process what it is particularly young people need to think about in preparing for expungement. I mean, there are adults who simply show up and say, I've done my time, I'm ready to be expunged. And of course, they're mystified when they're denied because they didn't produce any of the information that needed to be produced. But more importantly, they didn't go through the steps that they needed to go through in being able to demonstrate that they're no longer a quote unquote risk to society. That's correct. Your comment with regard to affidavits is absolutely on point. Affidavits are comparable to the write-ups for substantiations. They are rife with incorrect information. They're rife with information that's taken out of context. The line that I find most troubling in an affidavit is, Ms. X or Mr. Y has a long history with the department. That's the first thing the judge sees. What the judge never sees is that the long history was that they were a foster child for 15 years. That's their long history. Is it their fault that they were a foster child? I don't think so. And is being a foster child now something that is considered a negative? So if that's the case, why are we putting children in foster care? The system doesn't make any sense in that respect. But the biggest piece is this. I think you're absolutely right. My work with a number of investigators has led me to the belief that they don't fully comprehend the ramifications of what they're doing when they write the affidavits. They believe it's their job to get their case in front of a judge and have a judge get the family into court. They don't stop to think, what does that really mean? I mean, if I have to bolster statements so that it's really impressive, well, that's what that family has to counter when they go into family court. And we know that that system is as filled with failures as the substantiation system is. Because the legal representation system is a whole nother thing that needs to be reformed. Because the attorneys are not paid enough, they're not trained well enough, and there is no supervision of them relative to how they handle their cases. They have too many cases, not enough time to work on them, and consequently, most of the cases end in stipulations, where the parent says, yeah, I'll agree to almost anything so long as I can get my children back. What they're not told is that by agreeing to those things, they're now liable to be substantiated because they've admitted in court that they abused or neglected their child, even when they didn't. So, but thank you for that. Oh.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'd like to take a couple minutes. I know we're getting close to time here. But I became involved in the Vermont Parent Representation Center because my family has had two significant interactions with the Department of Children and Families. One of them was a substantiation, which occurred about 9 years ago. My family has personally lived everything that report talks about. DCF, there's an incident, DCF social worker spent about 5 minutes talking to my son, about 30 minutes collecting some general information from his wife, spoke to his wife again the next day on the phone, never heard another thing. 60 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. My son has been substantiated, placed on the Child Protection Registry for this notorious thing called risk of harm. We had never heard of the Child Protection Registry. We had never heard of substantiation. We had no idea what risk of harm meant or how it was determined. So we applied for a review. The reviewer was a retired DCF supervisor who was supposed to be neutral and independent and was neither. When we pointed out, once we applied for the review, we got the actual report that the DCF social worker wrote and pointed out a whole raft of errors, including the fact that the actual substantiation justification was this reasonable person standard of, well, the DCF social worker wanted to punish our son, so she claimed that a reasonable person would determine this, would claim something that no reasonable person would really claim. The independent reviewer made up a couple of lies to support the substantiation. So we went to the Human Services Board, we went to the review, a fair hearing, where a fair hearing officer, who was by no means fair, and we went through where the evidence, rules of evidence supposedly shifted to preponderance of evidence. But since there was no preponderance of evidence, the fair hearing officer made up some evidence, made up some statements to support the substantiation. At this point, Pinocchio's nose was so long it wouldn't fit in the room. We went to the Human Services Board for review, and we felt that at the review, the Human Services Board really understood what was going on. But in the end, the Human Services Board upheld the substantiation. Our son was on the registry for 7 years. He applied for expungement 2 years ago and was expunged, so it's now gone. In the interim, it had absolutely zero effect on us, fortunately. Our son didn't seek a job in any of the places that would require, him not to be on the registry. He has subsequently divorced his wife, but even during the divorce process, the fact that he was on the registry at that time never played into the process. The other scenario was one very, very opposite. I have another son whose wife had some severe mental health issues. We struggled for about 9 years. Our son refused to give up on her. We refused to give up on her. We did everything we could to try to help her. They eventually had a child. First few years weren't too bad, but when the child got to be 2, this is actually the child that we just celebrated birthday for, all of a sudden mother's behavior started to get more and more erratic, more and more difficult. The situation became more and more toxic. DCF got involved. They had a DCF social worker who spent a significant amount of time communicating with everybody, our son, my wife, myself, other family members. The goal was to try and keep the family together as long as the child could be kept safe. And DCF was on board with that. And they did everything they could. We had they call safety plans where, okay, this is how you respond. This is what kind of controls you put on access between mother and daughter. And unfortunately, the situation got to be so severe and we felt that it would come to that. We didn't want it to, but we felt it would, that DCF reached the point where they said mother and daughter can no longer live in the same house. My son was given the choice: you either file for separation, get a relief of abuse order to protect your child, or we will take the child into custody. My son very reluctantly took care of his child, took care of his daughter, and separated. He's now divorced. He has full legal rights and responsibilities. He has full physical custody, and he has total control over any contact between mother and daughter. The case has been closed, and we sent a letter to the supervisor to be placed in the service record of the social worker to acknowledge the professionalism and the compassion and the effort that she had put in helping our family. So that's the way the system should work. That's the way the system should work. Totally opposite from the way the system worked in the case of the substantiation effort, and in the case that we found in all these substantiation ones that have been part of VPRC. So thank you.
Just in closing, I'd like to say that because my background has been working in state service in Vermont, and particularly the first job was with SRS, we initiated this project with a sense that I expected that we would lose every appeal, because that would show us that the system worked. We found just the opposite. And I hate to use the word win or lose, but that's kind of how these things get sorted out. That's the reason we went from an original 15, we enlarged it to 20, then to 25, then to 30, because I kept thinking we must be doing something wrong in the selection process, even though it was first come, first serve. This can't be right. It is right. These weren't our decisions. These were all decisions made either by DCF itself or by the Human Services Board. Every one of them. None of them had to do with what I thought or didn't think. These were the decisions that were made. And I really did believe, I expected that we would, of the 15 we originally agreed to take, that number, I expected that we would lose all of them. Because when I worked in the system worked properly. That system is long gone. So, thank you very much for your time. And as I said, you can go to the website and take a look at the actual report. And H-169 is going to be debated this coming session in the legislature.
Larry and John, thank you very much for the. Okay, with that, we will reconvene on October the 4th for our next meeting. In the meantime, any initiatives or events or any of those sorts of things that you want to share with the partnership, send them to our mailbox that's on our communications at the partnership, and we will include them, or Melinda will include them in the weekly updates. So thanks again, everybody, for your time, and we'll see you next month on October the 4th. Have a great day. Bye.